Saturday morning, the phone rings. Detective, we need you right away. There's been a murder at the parking structure downtown. My son-in-law gets in his unmarked police unit and responds. This is the story that he told me about the murder after his investigation. 39-year-old male at home. His wife says she's not feeling well. She's got a sore throat. She thinks she's getting a cold. Would he please go to the store and get her some cough medicine? He looked at his 11-year-old son and he said, "Want to go for a ride?" Well, the ride is an Audi R8. And just in case you don't know, that's a mid-engine sports car that prices in somewhere north of $170,000. So of course the 11-year-old said, "Yeah, Dad, I'll go for a ride." So they get in the R8 and they scramble across town. They pull into the parking structure, and as they pull into the space, they're approached by the suspect. The suspect says, "Give me your keys." The man says, "You're not getting the keys to my car." The suspect pulls out a gun. The man, the father, turns to his son, says, "Run! Run as fast as you can." Turns back to the suspect, says, "You're not getting the keys." And at that time, the suspect pulls the trigger and shoots the man in the chest. He falls onto the concrete. Then the suspect stands over the top of him and puts a fatal bullet through his head, takes the keys, takes the car. My son-in-law says the hardest thing that he's had to do in his 15 years of police work was to interview that 11-year-old boy shortly after his father had been murdered in that parking structure. I'm looking at my son-in-law saying, "Oh my God, how do you process this? How do you work out of that and work into your next shift?" He said, "Well, I'll tell you another story. When I was a brand new patrol officer, I was working the graveyard shift. A call came in, suspected suicide. I was the first responder. The wife met me at the police unit. She says, 'My husband, he took the family gun and he went into the garage. I think he's done something horrible.' He said, 'Ma'am, will you please wait here?' He went into the garage. He opened up the pickup door, and sure enough, the guy had made a mess of the interior. About that time, he saw the wife starting to enter the garage. He shuts the pickup door. He walks over and he takes the wife by the hand and he says, 'Ma'am, you don't want to see what's in there. Let's go sit on the front porch and let the other responders take care of this.' He said, 'Dad, I sat on the porch with her for hours and I just listened. She talked about how they were having financial problems, but they had always worked through it before. She didn't know why it got to this point.' A few weeks later, I was standing in line at Starbucks, and a friend of mine came up behind me. He said, 'Did you hear about the suicide about 3 weeks ago?' My son-in-law said, 'Yes, I did.' He said, 'Well, that family are dear and close friends to my family, and the wife of the family is trying to figure out who the responding officer was that sat with her on the front porch. You see, she said that he literally saved her life that evening by spending that time with her unselfishly.' He said, 'Dad, I get an accolade like that. I get a thank you like that, and I'm good for 6 months worth of watches. That confirms that I am here to protect and serve my community.' My son, he's a patrol officer. Call comes over the radio, 911. Reporting party says, 'Tell my wife and my kids that I love them. I'm committing suicide. I just can't take it anymore.' The phone went dead. Dispatch doesn't know if he destroyed the phone or turned it off, but they said he was on long enough that they could determine that he was somewhere south of the airport. My son, several other units respond. They find a car in a field on a dirt road. Before they approach the car, they have to call for SWAT to come out. You see, SWAT has to take their high-powered lenses to clear the car. And the reason for that is twofold. One, you've heard of suicide by cop. The police approach the car, the reporting party is in the car, gets out, draws on the police, fires a shot, the police have to shoot back, then he's committed suicide by cop. He didn't have to do it to himself. The other scenario is that he's clearly not thinking with a straight mind, and a bunch of police officers approach the vehicle, and that just encourages him to commit suicide all the quicker. SWAT clears the car. The police officers approach it. They then physically search the car. The man's nowhere to be found. They fan out, look through the fields, and they find him. He was dead. The watch commander looks at my son and says, "You're coming with me to notify the family." They arrive over at the family's residence. They're invited in. The watch commander explains to the wife that her husband is dead and that he and the department are very sorry. About that time, the wife's sister barges in and squares up to my son and the watch commander. "You pigs! If you would have done your job, if you just would have been better at your job, this would have never happened. You could have prevented it." I looked at my son and I said, "And how do you get into the next watch? How do you process that?" He says, "Dad, about 3 days later, I was in line at a Subway, and I hear this small voice, 'Officer, officer.' And I kind of look around, and then I look down, and there's this little girl with big, bright eyes, and she's missing her 2 front teeth. And she looks up at me and she says, 'Officer, I just want to thank you for keeping me and my mommy safe.'" He goes, "Dad, that's all the fuel I need. As long as I get affirmations like that, I'm ready to protect and serve my community." You know, my 2 boys, in one shift, they can see things that you and I don't want to see in a lifetime. And in a week of watches, they hear and see more negativity than you and I would tolerate in but a few minutes. And yet, they put on their uniform and they hang their badge and they kiss my daughter and my daughter-in-law goodbye. And though they walk out the door and they cannot be 100% certain that they're going to end their watch and come home, they do it anyway. There's a lot of negative dialogue lately about the police and police departments. And I'm not here to pass judgment on either side. I'm speaking to you as a father and a father-in-law. And here's what I'd like to ask you to do. If you're comfortable, we need to change our dialogue. Since my 2 boys say that a small accolade will get them a long way, I'm going to encourage you the next time you're in close proximity to a man or woman in blue, if you would find it in your heart just to extend a simple thank you. And when you do that, the benefit to you, I hope you never have to make a call. But if you do have to make that call, you can rest assured that having given them the fuel that they need to run on, they're going to respond in an immediate, caring fashion. I hope and encourage you, just say thank you.